What's going on, everybody? We are back. We have got episode number 171 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we're talking UFC Vegas 89. Namajunas versus Amanda Ribas. Kind of a shitty card, but I think it's watchable. Lags and I was talking about it. You know, they're going head-to-head with college basketball on Saturday night, so it's not that surprising that they've put together such a meh show, I guess. But with that said, I have a fair amount of bets. I think it's an interesting card from a betting perspective. Before we jump into this, guys, drop a like, subscribe. Please drop a like if you're on the show. We get 700 views every week and like 70 likes. Not asking a whole lot here, right? And subscribe if you haven't. It would help us out. We'd appreciate it.
Close to that 1K mark.
Yeah. Brick Squad saying, is OSP landing 140 plus significant strikes and absorbing 100? The biggest outlier in recent memory. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it made me feel a lot better about betting OSP against Felipe Lynch in his last fight. I was like, maybe that wasn't such a bad bet after all with that performance there. But yeah, let's discuss last week real quick. For me, I lost 3.38 units. I mean, ultimately, I had some pretty good reads. It all came down to one fight. You know, I lost Brian Barberina. I ended up on, after that entire conversation that we had, I ended up with a unit and a half on him. Turned out I should have just listened to everything you said. He is shot. He's clearly not taking it seriously. Is what it is. I ended up with a unit and a half on Chelsea Chandler, plus 128, plus 137. That was pretty good. More or less, I think what we expected there. Just bigger, better grappling upside. Was able to hit her on the feet as well. I lost a unit on Corey McKenna, plus 110. I had a really bad feeling about that one going into the fight, to be frank. The line seemed like horribly out of control. I almost arbed off it because I was just like, how is she minus 180? You know, like it's one thing to say minus 140 range, but like minus 180. But yeah, I mean, she just fought like an idiot, went right into her guard and got herself subbed. I mean, it is what it is. I ended up with, I had 3 units on Isaac Dulgarian minus 125. I had another unit on the under 2.5 in that fight. I more or less thought that like if Rodriguez was going to win the fight, it would probably be a finish. And honestly, I'm not gonna. Everybody wants to justify their bet and whatnot here all week. I'll say this: on the one hand, I bet him at minus 125 because I knew he was the better grappler. I knew he would get takedowns, and I knew he'd get a lot of control. And at minus 125, that felt worth it. I still think that's the case. I still think minus 125 was probably the right side. I think where it closed, the minus 170, 180 range is probably right. In terms of how it was scored, I mean, Dulgarian. It's kind of weird because it's like, was it scored right because this is how judges are scoring fights these days, or was it scored right by the criteria? Like by the criteria, Dulgarian clearly won the fight. With that said, this is how judges are scoring these days. Like I didn't. My issue with it is I didn't even think that Dulgarian or that Rodriguez really did much damage in round 2 of that fight. You know, he landed that up knee, but he got taken down right off it. You know, it's not as if he like wobbled him or put him down or anything. And so like my view on the fight is Dulgarian's going to dominate round 1 more often than not. I think he's going to win round 2 far more often than not. And I feel like Dulgarian dominating the early portion of the fight is a lot more of a given than C-Rod is to get a 10-8 in round 3. You know, the truth of the matter is Dulgarian had a 10-8 in the bank, should have won round 2, and C-Rod still needed a 10-8 to squeak a split decision. Now, I'll say this. I hate betting against steps up in competition like this, especially with guys who haven't been past the first round. And so that, you know, I fucked that up. So like that's outside my system and I really shouldn't be doing that, but I didn't think it was a bad bet. And then I had a unit and a half on Marcin Tybura. That cashed pretty easly. Fight went pretty much exactly as I expected.
Great bet.
So, yeah, that was a great bet.
Hilarity.
So yeah, minus 3.3 units kind of sucks, is what it is. How'd you do, Lags?
Plus 0.4 units. So I had 3 bets in total. I had Corey McKenna as well, which, you know, as we touched on, Amram hit her round 1 sub condition. Had Chelsea Chandler as well at plus 124 for unit and a half. And then I had a small poke on Kennedy sub, which was pretty much dead in the water at 7-1. So, yep. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is a good point, though, because like the McKenna fight, it is weird. I thought the steam was a little crazy, but also if she was going to lose the fight, I feel like far more often than not, it was going to be a very quick
exactly
sub.
how she lost it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's hard to know what to put into that.
And it's hard to like feel bad about it laying it at minus 120 or you at plus 110. So
yeah. Agreed. Moving on though, today, first fight of the night or Saturday, Mohammed Usman, Mick Parkin. Both of these guys I've had interesting histories with. On the Mohammed Usman side, I bet him big at plus 200 against Junior Tafa, but I also bet Jake Collier big in his last fight against Mohammed Usman. On the Mick Parkin side, I bet Mick Parkin at plus 200 on Contender Series, but I bet Jamal Pogues big against Mick Parkin in his debut fight. So it's been a bit of a colorful history here, and I have another play here. I bet Mohammed Usman for 3 units in this fight. My view, the reason I bet Collier against Usman was I just felt like it was going to be tough for Usman to take him down, and Collier's work rate was just a lot more reliable. He's a better striker. Collier, for all of his issues, is a really good striker and a really good volume striker, and I felt like that was just going to be too much for Usman. And I don't want to put too much stock in his last fight, but Usman really impressed me there. Landing 85 significant strikes and matching Collier on volume, taking a round off him standing and 2 rounds standing on one card is pretty impressive. On the other side, you have Mick Parkin, who, I know people were impressed with him in his debut against Pogues, but I think I said this before the last Pogues fight. I just feel like he landed a couple leg kicks that adversely affect Pogues. He switched southpaw and then stopped fighting. The guy just has nothing out of southpaw, and he basically quit there. And so a lot of people put stock into his pace there, but it was pace against nothing coming back at him. And then, his next fight with Kyle Machado, he was minus 350. Kyle or Machado, is it Machado? Is that right? Am I right about that, Legs? Yeah. Okay. I can't remember if that's his name or not. I know it was something like that. But Machado is one of the worst fighters to get a contract off the Contender Series. He's really not good at all. And I mean, horrible grappler. Parkin couldn't hold him down much. I mean, he won because of top time, but it's not like he dominated on the mat, which is theoretically supposed to be what he's good at. On the feet, he got severely outlanded, and Machado's got no defense at all. He just wings overhands and just hopes they land. And he doubled him up on volume. And watching that fight, I felt like Parkin looked really, really slow. I felt the same way I did. I felt in that fight that he was exactly what I expected him to be coming into the Pogues fight, which is a fairly unathletic guy who's slow and doesn't have really terribly much upside, outside of fights where he can't bully guys. And so I look at this fight, I rate Usman's win over Collier a lot more than Parkin's, than any of Parkin's wins here. I think Usman, I shouldn't say I think, he is the far more experienced fighter here. He's got better wins. He's the far better athlete of the two. I think he's the better wrestler. Even if Parkin gets takedowns here, I'm pretty sure he's not going to keep Usman on the ground. And so I feel like Parkin kind of needs to outstrike him in all likelihood. And he can on volume. I think Usman is very, very hittable. He is easy to hit. But I feel like Parkin is too, and Usman's a lot faster. I would edge Usman slightly on the feet, but I think he's got way more KO equity. And I actually kind of think if he goes for it, and I don't know if he will or not, but I kind of think if he goes for it, he can maul Parkin on the mat. We saw some ugly positions that Parkin got into when he got put on bottom regionally. So, I think Usman should be a favorite here. It's probably going to be a competitive fight. They both throw decent volume for heavyweight. I don't think Usman is a superstar or anything, but I felt like it's worth a decent-sized bet for me when he's plus 125, and I think he should be, minus 150 here. What do you think, Legs?
Yeah, to your point at the end there, I do largely think it is a largely competitive fight. Yeah. So I'm at the money line where it's at. I'm not super interested, but what I am interested in is the no scorecards for Usman. If it is minus 115, obviously DraftKings still hasn't opened that out, but it seems like that's largely what Bet Online has opened it at. And that to me, that seems good because in this fight, I think most of the finishing upside is with Usman on the feet. Oh, right there.
Yeah.
But is with Usman on the feet. I don't think Parkin can grapple him and get him down. Usman's pretty strong, decent wrestling background himself. So, I think if anybody is finishing this fight, it's Usman. And if it goes the distance, I think it's probably close. But again, would lean Usman on the power optics.
Oh, yeah. Shout out the thumbnail real quick.
Yes.
That's Just Win Baby actually made that. I had like messaged him that I liked the thumbnails he was doing, and he like sent me that, and I was like, "Can I take it?" I guess he did it with AI, but it was a good one. I feel like I'm gonna start mixing the content up a bit more this year. I was actually, if my wife hadn't left me alone with my infant for 4 hours this afternoon, I was gonna put together some like different kind of slides we can mix in here. But we're gonna try to up the content game a little bit in 2024. But yeah, moving on. I will start with you here, Lags. We got Igor Severino, Igor da Silva Severino taking on Andre Lima. Current price, Lima minus 180. The comeback on Severino is plus 155. What do you think here?
Not a super passionate take, but I like Lima striking much better than Severino. And I think he has a decent bit of grappling background himself that I don't think he's going to be in too deep of shit really here in this matchup. So I think it's largely a good fight for him.
Yeah, it's kind of weird for me because I think Severino's game is a bit more well-rounded, and I think he's probably in MMA fought the better guys. But I do think it's weird. Like Severino's game is well-rounded in the sense that he's not really bad at anything, but I'm not actually sure he's good at anything either at this point in his career. But he's really young and he seems very, very durable. Whereas Lima, I actually think he's a very talented kickboxer. He obviously comes from that kickboxing background. And so like, I think that is a fairly exceptional part of his game. And even though Severino has commensurate MMA experience, obviously Lima's got a fair bit of kickboxing experience as well. So I lean to the Lima side here. I think minus 180 is probably fine for me. But I expect it to be a pretty competitive fight. They're both pretty interesting prospects. I kind of think the goes the distance at plus 135 is kind of interesting to me. I think these guys, I think the expectation is they're going to bang, but both of them look fairly durable to me. So I might take a poke at that. We'll see. Moving on though. Oh God, this fight sucks. We got Daria Zheleznyakova taking on Montserrat Rendon. Daria's minus 210, comeback on Rendon plus 180. I like briefly thought about betting Rendon here. And it's just, dude, it's so low level, man.
It's a classic John spot though.
Well,
I feel like it is. In terms of like the grappler versus like an unproven striker like this. Yeah.
But see, that's kind of the thing for me. It's like, I feel like if Rendon was even like an average grappler, like I'd send a bag on her here,
But she's not.
I really don't think Daria is a good grappler at all. Like, I think she's quite poor. And I think it's the kind of fight where if Rendon comes out of this fight looking minus 200, is anybody really surprised here? Like, not if you taped it. You're not, But the other side of that is Rendon's like 36 years old. She doesn't have much more experience than Daria does. I think in terms of hardware on the feet, Daria's obviously got like a very, very large edge here. She throws a lot harder. She's actually seems to have, I don't want to say elite power for a female because it's always one of those things when you're knocking out women that are 0-1 and 1-0. It's like, how much stock do you really put into that, But I think she's got plus power, which Rendon does not. And so, I don't know. I kind of lean to I lean to the Rendon side. It's just that she's 36, and even herself, she doesn't really have much in terms of like quality victories. Like beating Tamiris Vidal does not something that personally impresses me very much. Glimbot saying Rendon decision for the culture. That's an interesting one. I don't hate the look there. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. I really don't think Rendon's a good wrestler, and I'll let you give your opinion on it in a second. But like, I feel she's a grappler who is okay if she gets it down, but she's not a particularly threatening finisher from the bottom. And her wrestling just doesn't impress me. So it feels like a classic. Like, and to use a Gugabe is a minus 1,000 plus 1,000 spot where the winner is going to look very, very obvious in retrospect, but it's hard to say before. What do you think?
Well, on top of upping the content creation in 2024, we're going to up the Gugabe-isms as well. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you as well. Like, I don't think Rendon's wrestling is that good at all, and her on the feet. I mean, this is, I think, a wash personally on the feet. I think Daria's a much better striker, so I'm fine passing. Obviously, at the money line, there's no interest in laying the juice, so just more a gather information type of spot.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on, we got Stephen Nguyen. He's taking on Jarno Errens. Current price, Nguyen minus 164. The comeback on Errens plus 144. What are your thoughts here, Lags?
I think this could also be another awful fight. I don't really think much of Jarno Errens. I know you're going to probably give your opinion here, but I don't think there's much of to like about his game. I don't think he's much of a striker. Don't like his grappling game either. I mean, on the win side, I know he's pretty much like just a mid boxer, pretty one-dimensional, doesn't have much kicks either, but like I think that might be enough here. I get the money line might be a bit wide, but I think it's a decent spot for Nguyen.
Yeah, I bet 1.5 units on Errens at like plus 170. I wouldn't say it's like the most passionate take I've ever had here, but so like my recollection of Stephen Nguyen from like way back in the day when he first fought on Contender Series was that he had been a grappler prior to that, but he really hadn't been. And like when I first saw this fight come out, I'm like, this is a stupid fight. It's just a can of corn for Nguyen. He's going to grapple him, and that's going to be it. Because like Errens isn't a terrible grappler, but he can't get off his back, you know. But then I taped it, and it's like he doesn't grapple at all. And his striking, you know, he's got crisp boxing, but I mean, you look at the only guy he's fought that's even like somewhat decent, and I wouldn't even call him somewhat decent, is Alon Cruz, and that was like a 300 significant strike war where he got finished. And then you go through his last 2 contenders fights, and the 1-2 fights ago, the dude was mid as fuck. I put like nothing into that. But his last fight with AJ Cunningham, you know, I know he knocked him out violently, but I mean, Cunningham, I mean, don't get me wrong. The fight didn't seem like it was ever like super in doubt because Cunningham is just horrible. But Cunningham was touching him up with his own offense, like left and right, like landing whatever he wanted to land on him. And it was kind of similar to the Cruz fight. And it made me feel like Nguyen's defense just hasn't improved at all. And maybe the rest of his game hasn't really improved that much. And so Errens, like, I'm not a big fan of Jarno Errens' game, but he's a good kicker. He's got pretty good jiu-jitsu. He's not the best boxer, but he hits hard. He's certainly fought the better level of competition. He's certainly the more experienced fighter. I think, is he younger? Am I mistaken about that? Errens might be the younger fighter, too, of the two. He is younger. He is younger than Nguyen. So the guy comes from a kickboxing background. He's got a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I don't know, man. I just feel like I lean Nguyen ever so slightly here, but it does kind of feel like a lot of stock is being put in Nguyen beating AJ Cunningham, who belongs nowhere near the UFC, and perhaps not enough stock is being put in the fact that Errens has, you know, he's got a couple wins on Brave. He competed in spots with Gomes and Sewon Choi, who had both make decent-sized favorites against Nguyen. So I don't know, small bet on Errens for me. I'm not super passionate, but I do think it's like an interesting spot for him. AWMD saying Lags is a Saaiman lookalike. I can't wait to talk about that fight. You do kind of have those Cody Saaiman vibes. You're a bit bigger than him in person, I'm sure, but you know.
Fair enough.
Moving on, though, we got Miles Johns taking on Cody Gibson. Current price, Johns minus 141. Comeback on Gibson plus 121. I thought about betting Johns at around pick and ultimately passed there just because I don't really trust Johns' game against a guy who could conceivably push a pace on him. You know, I bet Johns against Argueta last fight, but he was a dog in that fight. And Argueta, you know, Argueta may push a pace, but you know Argueta is going to make it as easy as possible to hit him while pushing that pace. But at the same time, I don't really have any interest in Cody Gibson here. And I've seen a lot of interest in Cody Gibson, but I think many people are probably putting a lot of stock in his fight with Brad Katona in his last time out there, which obviously was a high volume war. Something I noticed going a bit further back in his tape, though, is that Gibson doesn't really push a heavy pace when he's taking on a guy that can hit with like real power. You know, Katona has basically pillow fists and still hurt Cody Gibson in that fight multiple times, by the way. But, you know, he seemed kind of okay going to war there. But like you go back to his fight with John Dobson, and John Dodson, and obviously that's a guy he had a large size advantage over, large reach advantage over. Pace was pretty tepid there. You go to his fight with Francisco Rivera, and Rivera was hurting him basically every time he let his hands go. And you saw Gibson wanted no part of being in defeat on that fight. I actually kind of think, despite how the Katona fight looked, Gibson's almost best as a grappler, an offensive grappler. Like, he's got decent jiu-jitsu and okay wrestling. I really think he's a bit of a liability on the feet. He doesn't have good defense. He doesn't really seem to take shots very well. And which is why I'm not really interested in playing him. I thought I might be, but when I went back, that's what I saw. And like, I don't think he's going to wrestle Johns here. Like, Johns very, very good takedown defense. I think Johns can hurt him bad on the feet if he engages with him in the pocket too much or tries to kind of force the kind of pace he did on Katona. And I actually think Johns could out wrestle Gibson fairly easily if he decided to go that route. So I'm going to pass, though, because I still, Miles Johns at juice with that cardio, I don't really want any part of it. But I do think Johns is the better fighter here, and I do kind of think he's a deserved favorite. What are your thoughts, Legs?
I'm never a Miles Johns guy, like pretty much ever, just because, like you touched on right there with the cardio. But on top of that, like even the wrestling, he hardly ever goes to it because of that gas tank. So
yeah,
not much. There's really not much upside with Johns at juice, hardly ever. But like I feel like in the spot, like you touched on with Gibson's, just like the suppression of the volume here, I think Johns absolutely can do that here. And yeah, I feel like it's one of those kind of fights where it largely stays standing. Johns is just landing the harder shots and just suppressing a lot of Gibson's volume. I do think his length could give him some issues, but he's super hittable coming into space. So, and he's 37 years old as well. So, don't think there's a ton of upside. Go ahead.
Glenbot mentioned the split decision props, and I actually think if you have a book that offers those, that could be a decent way to look at. Because I do kind of expect it'll be pretty close in all likelihood, unless there's a finish, you know?
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to lay like over 2.5 at juice, knowing like the Johns power is. I'd rather take big flyers on the splits.
Yeah, or a big flyer on like John. What is Johns KO?
I can't imagine that's big.
Probably not. Although he never finishes anybody. Oh God, plus 300. Fuck that. That's I was gonna say if it's like plus 700, I'd be interested in it, but moving on though, Ricardo Ramos taking on Julian Juicy J Erosa. Current price Ramos minus 148. The comeback on Erosa plus 128. What are your thoughts here, Legs?
I don't think my thoughts differ from a lot of the people that are going to give thoughts about Juicy J this week and the chin concerns. I mean, I laid off of the Padilla spot, which in hindsight, like Padilla's, in my opinion, not very good. Great spot for Juicy J skill wise, like the skill off the charts there in that type of a matchup, but obviously gets chin checked. I just don't think you can trust the durability, really. And that's what I think is just what it comes down to. I know Ricardo Ramos, like, nothing special himself. I think he could have some grappling success here. Rosa's not great off his back, and obviously could land some spinning shit on the feet to catch Erosa. But if it gets into a late, drag him out war, obviously we know where Erosa can take it. But it's a pass for me.
Yeah, I want to bet Erosa because I do love Juicy, but. And I did bet him against Padilla. Ouch.
I know.
Rip.
I know.
But I have a couple concerns. Obviously, I have the round 1 KO concern. I think I have less of a concern for that here than I have in some of his previous fights. Because I feel like most of Ramos's power is generated via like spinning stuff. Like when you look at it historically, like he's not planting many guys, with like just regular boxing combinations. But Erosa walks forward with his hands down and his shin in the air, so maybe he can plant him with one. I actually have a bit more concerns about the grappling, and I wouldn't be surprised if Erosa can neutralize it, but I don't really have a great feel for Erosa's grappling because he got taken down by Julio Arce like 7 or 8 fights ago, scrambled up pretty quickly, but Arce not really much of a top game. And then he got mauled on the mat by Grant Dawson, but it's like, Arce not much of a top game, and now we're going the other extreme of it. And other than that, no one's really tried to wrestle him a whole lot, So I don't have a very good read on what that'll look like. And I do think Ramos, despite of him cucking against Jourdain and quick tapping to that guillotine, I do have like a reasonably high opinion of his grappling game. Like he's got a good body triangle. He's a decent wrestler for a jiu-jitsu guy. He's pretty big. So I could see Ramos doing it. I kind of, as much as I'm tempted to play the Julian side here, because I do think he is, to your point, I think he's the better fighter and the more dangerous fighter here. I have a number of questions. One, because he's getting older. I don't know how much his chin has left, even given that Ramos doesn't have big power anymore. I don't know quite how the grappling dynamic is going to play out. I just have too many questions. As much as I want to bet him, I'd much rather just kind of wait and see, what do the first couple minutes look like? How's he reacting to shots? Can he get off his back? Can he close distance? Like that kind of stuff. I'd rather have answers and go live than get in before, I think.
Yep. Agreed.
So moving on, though, I have a bet here. We got Trey Ogden taking on Kurt Holobaugh. I bet Ogden at like minus 148. I don't feel like the best about it. I bet him to win a unit. And I've like been going back waffling in my head whether or not I should have made this bet or not. But and it's the kind of fight where I kind of wanted to bet Holobaugh before tape. I was in my head, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to bet Kurt at dog. But I kind of think Kurt Holobaugh is fucking washed, man. I know he just beat Austin Hubbard in his last fight. But in addition to kind of thinking he's washed, I don't even think he was the best to begin with. Like Kurt Holobaugh was great if you'll bite down and swing with him in the pocket. Because he can take a shot and he can give a shot, He will sit there, swing and play, rock'em sock'em robots with you all day long. But he's looked pretty bad whenever guys won't just stand directly in front of him and move. He just seems kind of plotting. He can't cut off the cage very well. He's just kind of easy to outmaneuver at distance. And that's what's happened to him every time he's fought someone that won't brawl with him. He's a decent jiu-jitsu player, but he's a pretty poor wrestler, and he struggles pretty bad to get off his back. Like, even at his best, he struggled bad to get off his back. Then you go and watch on Tough. He's fighting Lee Hammond, who's a 5-1 nobody, who lost his next fight after that fight. He submitted Hammond, but he got absolutely mauled before he submitted him. And this is just like a guy they pulled off the street who's like an okay grappler. And even the Knight fight, I mean, it was a violent fight, but Jason Knight at this stage of his career had far too much success for me to be very encouraged by what Kurt showed in that fight. And the Hubbard fight, same deal. I mean, Hubbard was mostly winning that fight until he got clipped and then he got subbed. I just kind of think he's fading away fast here in Ogden. I'm not like super high on Ogden, but Ogden is very, very good at playing like the heavily evasive game, jab, kick, get out of there. We've seen him do it to perfection against Daniel Zellhuber. That win's aged very, very well. He obviously was doing it to Nick Mota fairly easily in his last fight. And I think Mota I actually think is a decent comp for Ogden in that I think he has similar kind of foot speed and ability to get around the cage that Ogden does. And
Holobaugh, I think you mean, but yeah.
Holobaugh. Sorry. Yeah,
yep.
Correct. But then even, the loss to Bahamundes, Bahamundes was having trouble forcing engagements, but he was just kind of chewing him up with kicks. Holobaugh doesn't really do that. And so, I think Ogden's if he just takes the same approach he has his last few, I think he should be able to stay safe and outpoint him here. And, he's done a good job of using takedowns to break pressure in these last couple of fights. And if he does that and he gets Holobaugh down, I think he can dominate in those positions. So, I made Ogden 65% here. It's not the most confident pick ever. And I could see if Kirk can force him into a phone booth, he's going to knock him out, obviously. But I just think he's going to struggle with the footwork of Ogden. What do you think, Logs?
Pretty much exactly what you touched on right at the end there, is that Nicholas Mota is a great comp to Holobaugh because, who's another guy who is only good if you stand directly in front of him and look in the chuck heavies? Nicholas Mota. And who got stuck in the Ogden verse? Nicholas Mota. That's exactly
that's my point.
I think exactly that's what's going to happen here with Holobaugh, and I played the over 2.5 at minus 140 to win a unit.
I like that too. When I thought about playing it, I'm just I feel like I'm tying too much of my wagon to Trey Ogden if I do that.
I would say, if it goes over, it's likely an Ogden win, whereas if it goes under, it's probably a Holobaugh finish.
Yeah, I mean, Holobaugh could win a decision, but I favor Ogden a decent amount in a decision,
Agreed.
Whereas if I'm on the over and Ogden and Holobaugh ices him, I'm going to be sick, So
yes, yep.
But I agree with you.
Don't want to double dip. Don't want to double dip.
No, I do not want to double dip here. Moving on though, banger fight here. Luis Pajuelo, he's taking on Fernando Padilla. Padilla current price is minus 164. The comeback on Pajuelo plus 144. What are your thoughts?
Banger of a fight, like you said. I think this could be interesting. I don't think Pajuelo is great in really anything other than throws pretty hard. Will come after you on the feet. doesn't have much of grappling upside at all. His defensive grappling is horrible. But, like, Padilla doesn't have much of pace on the feet. Like, if he's not knocking you out, he doesn't really separate much. So, like, I can see this being a close fight that goes 15. So that's kind of where I'm more so leaning. I think Pajuelo decision at like 4-1 would be a decent shot, but I don't think he's very good personally.
Yeah, I think Padilla is going to beat his ass, to be honest. I bet Padilla to win a unit and a half. It's not like I'm not like max betting Padilla. Don't get me wrong, because I like you. I don't have like the highest opinion of Padilla in the world, but I do. You know, we've at least have extended footage of Padilla against like reasonably talented fighters, both in the UFC and prior to the UFC. Like he fought a decently high level regional complex schedule. And I think we have a pretty good idea of what he is. He's tall, long. He's a pretty sharp boxer. He's a pretty sharp counter striker. He throws decent kicks. If you put him on his back, he's got decent jiu-jitsu. And he's got pretty good cardio. And so far, he's been very durable. Like, I know Nelson hurt him in his last fight, but Nelson's a big hitter. To your point, I'm like a little less worried about Padilla's volume so much as I don't think he's very good at being forced to initiate. Like, Nelson was fought really smart and just was like, yeah, I'm not going to bite down in the pocket. I'm going to stay on the back foot and just kick you in the calf over and over again and force you to kind of chase me. I don't think he's great at that game, but like if you take it to him, he'll let his hands fly. And Pajuelo on the other side, I mean, dude, I'm not saying he's a fake fighter. He's obviously very violent, but he fought a bunch of fake fighters, you know? Like
I don't disagree. Don't disagree at all.
Like Padilla's in like Fury. He's fought some pretty decent regional guys. Pajuelo's in the Peruvian regionals, like knocking out his local janitor and taxi driver, you know? And so like and by the way, on those Peruvian regionals against those fairly poor fighters, he's getting touched up almost every fight. They're all touching his chin. He's got like no defense whatsoever. He's getting grappled by some of them. He's got like no grappling whatsoever. Then he comes to Contender Series and he fights Robbie Ring. Everybody's over the moon about Robbie Ring. Meanwhile, no one knows this kid's mom and dad are his coach, who basically gave him like the softest schedule he could have leading up to Contenders. His only good win was what's his face? The dude Billy Q assassinated in his first UFC fight. I can't remember his name. Complete shitter, but he had a cup of coffee in the UFC. Let me see if I can find it. No, I'm not. You see if you can find it. But anyway, Robbie Ring, fake fighter, complete fake fighter. And Robbie Ring having a lot of success, and then first time he has adversity, just totally melts. And so I don't think Pajuelo's a bad fighter. You know, he's obviously or I shouldn't say I don't think he's a bad fighter. I don't think he's like a fake fighter. I don't think he is a fraud per se. He's very aggressive. He seems to hit hard. He seems to have good cardio, but I don't really think he has any plus skills other than like cardio and aggression. He's got no defense at all. He keeps his chin high in the air. He's got no grappling. And now he's fighting a guy like Fernando Padilla, and Pajuelo hasn't fought anybody who is
Jacob Kilburn.
That's the one. Total garbage man. And Padilla hasn't fought he hasn't fought anybody bigger than him. And Padilla's got 4 inches of height on him and 7 inches of reach, I believe. Padilla actually is a sharp counter striker. He's never fought someone like that in his career. He's never faced someone with the power that Padilla has. And so I feel like he's going to be entering the pocket and just eating combinations that are sharper, straighter, and way harder than anything he's ever seen before. So when I hear people talk about his durability, it's like, are you sure he's going to hold up when someone in the UFC hits him like that? Because I'm really not sure. And then to even like, do I expect Padilla to grapple? No. But if his team is smart, they'll tell him to, because if he decides to grapple, he's just going to maul this guy. So yeah, I mean, I feel like Padilla minus 200, minus 210 range makes sense. He's a far more proven fighter. He's a much more technically sound fighter, in my opinion. Yeah, give me Padilla here. Moving on, though, I'll keep it with you, Legs. We got Billy Quarantillo. He's taking on Yusuf Zalal. A lot of Yusuf Zalal love this week. Did not expect that. Caught me off balance.
I'm going to say this as a hot take right off the bat, though. I think the Billy Q Zalal fight has taken over the people's main event over Talbott Saaiman this week. That's my personal opinion.
Has it, though? Because I think you and I are the only people in the world that seem to think Billy Q's that the line is off, that everybody else likes Zalal, you know?
That's true. All right, well, starting off on that, like you had mentioned, we both like the Billy Q side here. There's no doubt Billy Q has looked regress in these last couple fights. Like, he has looked slow. He's definitely hittable. But, like, this fight being aligned competitive where Billy's going to double him up on the volume, I don't think there's a massive amount of grappling upside for Zalal. Could he use his stick and move game? He is pretty fast and has, decent counter game. Sure, but I just don't – to me, I just see the volume being way too big in this type of a spot. Like, I know we talked a little bit before about, volume being suppressed. Zalal has no power to suppress that volume here. So I think minus 130 on Billy, I think it's a great line pre-fight. I know people want to wait and bet, live. I think we're getting near pick'em here. I like it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So I have enough concern. So as you know, and as most people watch the show
now, not go huge on Billy.
Yeah. I am 100%. A card-carrying member of the Never Billy Q fan club. I have never been a big fan of Billy Quarantillo because his game is just, it's all based on his cardio and aggression. Obviously he can be out technical by better fight. I mean, everybody out technicals him, but he can be beaten by guys with good cardio who will hang in there and throw back harder than he does. And I guess that's where my issue is with this fight. Because I agree Zalal's got good cardio, but you mentioned it. I mean, the volume is crazy here. So, like, you look at Billy Q's last two fights, right? Or not his last two. His last two fights where he's fought someone that tried to grapple. He landed in round one, despite giving up 3.5 minutes of control time, he landed 45 total strikes against Damon Jackson. Did about the same in round one against Alexander Hernandez, despite giving up about 3 minutes of control time. Jackson fight, he got controlled for 6.5 minutes. He landed 170 total strikes. Conversely, we saw 2 rounds in Zalal's last UFC fight of grappling between him and Blackshear prior to round 3, and Zalal landed 15 total strikes. He just doesn't throw strikes in grappling exchanges, and it's not isolated to that fight. We can go all the way back. Yusuf Zalal, he comes into the UFC. He beats Austin Lingo pretty easily, but Austin Lingo's a bum. He fights Peter Barrett, layup. He fights Jordan, who never won a fight in the UFC. He fights Jordan Griffin, who's no longer in the UFC. Jordan Griffin, it's 1-1 in that fight. Like, he's not separating from Jordan Griffin, who's a horrible minute winner. And Jordan Griffin's just completely gassed out in round 3 and just gets, jabbed up. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. But, and just gets jabbed up in round 3. Then he takes a step up in competition. He fights Ilia Topuria. And I've seen a lot of people give him credit for this. It's like, I give him credit for not getting submitted, but let's be honest. He got mauled for 2.5 rounds, and then Topuria totally death-gassed on the back end of that fight, and he won round 3, but he only landed 17 significant strikes that fight. Takes on Sean Woodson. Again, this is another example of grappling where he's not landing strikes. He outlands Woodson in significant strikes, 43-40 in that fight. He gets about 7 minutes of control time where he's basically just clinching Woodson up to the fence. Woodson outlands him 110 to 55 because he doesn't throw strikes in those positions. Loses a split decision. Takes on Sung Woo Choi in the next fight. Loses 30-27. Very similar fight. Keeps trying to initiate grappling exchanges. Keeps getting, outlanded in the clinch and then outworked and outgrappled in the clinch by Choi. Again, not a lot of volume in that fight. The Blackshear fight, like I just mentioned, 15 total strikes to 2 rounds. Yes, he put it on Blackshear late, but no one ever talks about the fact that Blackshear took that fight in under a week's notice and was totally death-gassed in round 3 of that fight.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then he gets released. He goes, fights a couple bums. His last fight was against an 0-0 fighter. Like that's and so he's 27. Like, could he be getting better? Yes. Do I think he's technically better than Billy? Yes. But Zalal, even against guys who will take it to him, hasn't shown a willingness to throw output. Whereas you look at Billy, this is a guy who 4 fights ago fought Shane Burgos. Burgos did a number on him, but he landed 165 significant strikes across 3 rounds with Shane Burgos. 2 fights ago, Edson Barboza, he loses that fight, but they were basically even on distance strikes prior to the knee that finished him. And Edson Barboza has better footwork than Yusuf Zalal does. He's a far more imposing and dangerous striker than Yusuf Zalal was. And yet Billy was walking him down and landing. Everything I'm hearing about why not to bet Billy has to do with how bad he looked against Damon Jackson. And I agree, he looked poor in that fight. I bet Damon Jackson in that fight, though. I wasn't really surprised by it, And yeah, I mean, Jackson hurt him, but many other guys have hurt him. Gabriel Benitez hurt him back in the day. Like, Billy can be hit and hurt. My issue with this fight, in a nutshell, is like, to beat Billy, you can't just jab and low kick your way to a victory, because Billy will come for you and throw a ton of strikes and just outwork you. You can out wrestle him if you're a good enough wrestler, but that's a tough ask too. And I do think that's a potential path for Zalal, but I'd be surprised if he could.
I just don't think Zalal has the build for it. Like, he doesn't have like a Gavin Tucker physique where he can control Billy. So like, no, I don't think it's that much on the table.
And Tucker was like a Henzo black belt too, you know, like it's a different level of grappling. I think both can land takedowns though. Like, I expect them to be exchanging in the clinch a lot, but that's the thing. Billy throws a fuckload of strikes out of the clinch. Zalal throws none. We're seeing how fights are being scored these days. They're being scored almost exclusively on damage. We know Billy is going to be putting out a flurry of damage constantly. And so I guess just to me, I trust Billy to come out there and throw 300 strikes unless Zalal puts him down. I think for Zalal to win this fight, he is going to have to stop circling, bite down, and let his hands go. But that's not really his game. You know, his game isn't to exchange heavy in the pocket. But the guys who have beaten Billy, that's what they do. I mean, Edson put him out with a knee. I mean, he could do that, I suppose. But Burgos, I mean, he bit down and lit him up in the pocket. Tucker literally sat there and just exchanged with Billy for about 15 minutes. But these guys are far, far more efficacious boxers than Zalal is. So yeah, I mean, ultimately it's like we talked about the volume. I think Zalal is kind of an athletic nothing without much stopping power, and just the guys they've been fighting. I mean, you look at the guys Zalal beat, and then you look at the guys Billy's been fighting. Like, and I feel half the people betting Zalal were betting Billy against Edson Barboza 2 fights ago. And it's like, what the fuck are we doing here? You know? So yeah, I like Billy. I have him to win a unit and a half. I'm getting reverse CLV here apparently, but we'll see how it goes. Moving on though. Banger fight here. Payton Talbott, Cameron Saaiman, legs. Well, first, Payton Talbott minus 140, the comeback plus 120. Do you think Payton Talbott is a future champion?
I don't. And then to go on the comment earlier, looking at his Tapology pick, I could see the resemblance, me and him, a little bit. I could see it.
Payton Talbott?
No, me and Simon.
Oh, Simon, yeah.
I have an afro. What are we doing? Jeez. Really interesting fight because I think Talbott's game is mostly just, volume, pacing guys, out cardioing guys who just, quite frankly, can't keep up that cardio, can't keep up that pace. And I think Simon probably could. Like, I think he could land takedowns here early. He is fairly hittable on the feet, Simon is, but so is Talbot. Like, I feel like on the feet, this is going to be a fairly competitive fight where Simon's landing hard strikes, where so is Talbot. Like, I think both are hittable enough where they both can have success, but I only see Simon having success on the wrestling. I think it's a super interesting fight, though. I don't have a super strong take, though, either way. But I lean the Talbot side just based on the pace.
I like Cameron a fair amount here. I bet him early. I bet him last week at minus 107 for a unit. Obviously, that went the other way. I've added another unit at plus 130. I'll probably get down like a half unit more. I'm just kind of trying to DCA into the price here. I just like the Simon side here a fair amount. Like I understand like why folks like to pay Payton Talbot. Obviously, very, very durable, great cardio, high pace. But I mean, besides, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to downplay how important, durability, cardio, and pace are. They're obviously very, very important. But he also has just about no defense at all. He's fought a very, very poor strength of schedule. He's not a good grappler. Like, he's a pretty poor wrestler. His jiu-jitsu looks pretty suspect to me. And I feel like he's winning a lot of these fights by just existing and coming forward until his opponents can't take it anymore, which can work fine at like the upper divisions, like Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington basically made a career off of out cardioing and durability, guys in the heavier divisions. But at like men's 135, how often, I'll put it this way. Once you get to the UFC, how many guys at 135 in the UFC have bad cardio? Not bad. Almost not.
Honestly, like, I'm trying to think like the elite guys at 135. It's like, yeah, no.
Yeah, it's 135, like cardio is pretty commonplace because they're great athletes down there. And so I feel like that strategy of I'm just going to walk through you until you break isn't going to work as he goes up the ranks. On top of which, you combine it with the fact that like Payton Talbott, he is undefeated, but I mean, he lost the first round to Reyes Cortez, who then gassed out. He lost the first round to Nick Aguirre, who gassed out. He lost the first round, I think might have been 2 rounds to Christian Rivas, who then gassed out. And I don't think he lost the first round to Billy Brand, but he was getting teed off on by Billy Brand and just kind of had big moments to put him out. And I'm bringing that up just to point out that, like, this isn't a guy who's like, Habib Nurmagomedov coming out here and just like murking fools on the mat and dominating. He's having very competitive fights with guys that just aren't very good. Cameron Saaiman, I have questions about Saaiman. I bet Christian Rodriguez against him in his last fight. I think he's got his flaws, but he's kind of in some respects a clone to Talbott in that he's very, very durable. He's a very good athlete. He's got a very, very strong gas tank. I don't think he's quite as powerful as Talbott, but I think he has a lot of power. Like, I kind of think that's getting underrated here. I don't think it's going to be a case where Saaiman's shots aren't affecting Talbott. Like, if Talbott comes in and swings with him, I wouldn't be shocked if Saaiman hurts him. I think he's a bit more diverse than Talbott, especially at a southpaw. He kicks the body a lot. Talbott really hasn't had to deal with somebody that kicks the body at all. I think he's a better wrestler than Talbott is. I doubt he's going to get a ton of top time, but like, I kind of think he'll get a couple takedowns here. And he pushes a pace that like Talbott does. Arguably a better one. And the big difference between the two of them is Cameron Saaiman is entering his 5th fight in the UFC? Yeah. Fifth fight in the UFC. Right. He's 3-1 in the UFC. And you can say he's beaten bad guys, and it's true. But like, I feel like Mana Martinez, if he just stood on the feet with Payton Talbott, like, he might get broken or finished because he's kind of fragile. But I think Mana Martinez would have plenty of success standing against Payton Talbott. Christian Rodriguez.
Maybe for like 2 minutes. But yeah.
No, but you know what I mean. Like, Mana Martinez, he's got hands,
Yeah.
But like Mana Martinez is definitely better than the other guys Payton Talbott's fought in his career. I'm like very certain of that. Like Christian Rodriguez, I actually was kind of impressed with how he fought in the Rodriguez fight. Like, I thought Rodriguez was going to box him up pretty easily because Rodriguez he's a pretty good counter boxer if you sit in the pocket with him. And he actually struggled a ton with Saaiman at distance. Like, he had to use the clinch a bunch. And that's something where I actually don't think Talbott is good. What's up, Pepe? Where I don't think Talbott is very good at all is the clinch. And Saaiman kind of is there. So like, I just look at it and like, yeah, they're similarly built fighters, but I mean, Saaiman's fought better guys. He has a lot of the same attributes that Talbott has that have gotten him to this point, except he's not as available to hit as Talbott is. And he actually has a deeper game than Talbott does. I think it's a competitive fight. I obviously think Talbott can win it, but like, I make Saaiman, like, I felt like Saaiman should be like minus 130 here, like 55 to 58% range for me. I trust his game more. I trust his grappling more. I think I don't think he is going to break the way a lot of these guys Talbott has fought have broken before them. Talbott, this is like, I heard Mugabe say this, but he's not wrong. Like, Talbott seems like he's kind of getting the O'Malley shine here, except the huge difference is O'Malley doesn't get hit, like, ever in his career. Like, O'Malley's got some of the best standing defense, like, in the history of the UFC, whereas Talbott gets hit all the time, So, yeah, I think Talbott probably, if he wants it, could have a pretty long UFC career. But dude, you see this guy, I don't want to like throw narrative. Like, the guy's saying he's not going to fight for more than 3 to 5 more years. Like, how fucking seriously is this guy even like taking MMA? Like, we don't even really know. He doesn't look to me like he's gotten much better than he was a couple years ago. So I don't know. We'll see. I'll be on Saaiman for about 2.5 units here though. Moving on though, Edmund Shahbazayan, he is taking on AJ Dobson. Current price, Shahbazayan minus 200, come back on Dobson plus 170. What are your thoughts here, Legs?
Should be a great fight for Edmund, quite frankly. I mean, off the top, just the 4 losses that he's had, Imavov, Jack, Brunson, Fluffy. I mean, those guys are like galaxies apart from AJ Dobson. To me, AJ Dobson's a low volume striker, a little bit of power, doesn't grapple hardly at all. I mean, we talked about it literally in the Petrosian fight. It's like, oh, if he grappled, could grapple a little bit, and doesn't really stick to it. So I think it should be an easy fight for Edmund on the feet. Obviously, that big cardio narrative that we talk about, I think it's more so, and you're going to touch on it a little bit here, it's the adversity, when he's facing adversity in the cage. And to me, I don't think AJ Dobson presents any type of adversity. So I think this is a walk in the park for Edmund, quite frankly. But I do like a starts round 3, almost like a minus 125. I think this fight gets later.
Yeah, I can't get there with AJ Dobson, and I have never really been a huge fan of Edmund, but it's not like, I think Dobson's got tools, you know. He's obviously pretty durable. He's got decent power. He's a decent wrestler, but he's the epitome of a doer of nothing. You know, he has no work rate. Like you mentioned the Petrosian fight. I bet him there because I'm like, if he's coached by Mark Coleman. If he's done his tape, he's going to come out here and just take him down 10 times in this fight. He took him down twice very easily, never tried again. Just kind of content to lose, to get kicked on the outside for 15 minutes. I don't look, Edmund is prone to collapse, but yeah, you mentioned it. I have this, like, Edmund's cardio is not good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to try to make an argument it's good, but I do think a lot of it is mental. You look at some of these fights when Edmund does go like full meltdown mode, it tends to be after the fight kind of turns on him. Like the Fluffy fight was having a lot of success early in that round. When Fluffy finally consolidated top, it seemed like he quit. Jack fight looked very, very confident for about a round and a half. But as soon as Jack got on top, he seemed to go from like 100 to 0. Imavov fight, same thing. Round 2 was looking good. Looked fine in that round, got a takedown. And then as soon as that Imavov reversed him, it seemed like he went from 100 to 0. Brunson fight. Dude's throwing heat for about 7 minutes. And then literally out of nowhere, just suddenly he's just gone. It just seems like he is, when he can't punish his opponents, he just checks out of fights if they're dealing damage back at him. And I just don't know that Dobson's going to come out here and do that to him. I shouldn't say I feel. Edmund is the better fighter, technically. He's a much better boxer. He's the longer fighter. He's the much better kicker. Even in the wrestling, if Dobson did push it, I don't expect he will, I'm pretty confident Dobson's not going to out-wrestle Edmund. Edmund's honestly, like, he's bad on bottom, but he's an underrated wrestler. And I can't imagine Dobson having, like, extended wrestling success against Edmund in this fight. And like, yeah, I mean, Edmund can collapse here and lose this down the stretch, I guess. I shouldn't say I guess. He could. I just don't think, I think to do that to him, you need to be willing to push it, though. And we have seen Dobson definitively be unwilling to push it, you know? He needed to go forward against Petrosian. Like, didn't do it. So he's going to do it to Edmund, who's way more dangerous than Arman is on the feet? I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Am I betting Edmund at minus 200? No, of course not. I will never bet Edmund Shahbazayan at minus 200 in a UFC fight. I might bet him by decision, though. Plus 275 right now. That's a pretty good number to me. Dobson seems durable. He seems very happy to not engage. I lean the Edmund side, and I lead Edmund by decision in this fight. Moving on. We got Carl Williams. He's taking on Justin Tafa. Current price. Wow. Holy shit. Pepe saying DK open, Waldo Cortez Acosta plus 310, Rebellos to Spain. That would be a max bet for me. Honestly. That would be a very, very easy max bet. Maybe not a max bet, but I would bet him fairly large in that spot. But anyway, Carl Williams, Justin Tafa. Current price, Carl Williams minus 180. Comeback on Tafa plus 155. I bet Williams to win a unit and a half at minus 175 here. I talk about it every time Tafa fights. The guy is a horrendous grappler, and no one ever forces him to grapple. I thought we were going to get that with the Lima fight. Obviously, he pulled out of it, and his brother got the treatment instead. I think Carl Williams
sacrifice instead.
Yeah, that was horrible, dude. Can you fucking believe that, like, people bet Junior Tafa down to, like, dude? I bet the Lima like minus 170 there. Like,
that's the under.
Insane. But anyway, yeah, I mean, go back. I've said it a million times. Watch any shows where I've broken down a Justin Tafa fight here. This guy's got about the worst regional grappling tape I've ever seen of anybody in the UFC. He's faced 2 takedown attempts in the UFC, and both were just horrible attempts. He's never really faced anybody who's really tried to wrestle him. All Carl Williams is going to try to do is try to wrestle him here. And can Justin Tafa come in there with his fast hands and his top level power and knock out Carl Williams? I'm sure he can. But you know what's interesting when I was like kind of going through this fight? I always think of Tafa as having like fought like a reasonably decent level of competition for a guy, because he's got like 7 UFC fights. You know, he's fought like a bunch of times in the UFC.
See, I'm the complete opposite. I know like the bottom, like absolute low level guys that he's been fighting. He's just been skirting off.
It's crazy,
really.
Man.
It's like, bad. It's really bad. Jordan
De Castro beat him. He beat Juan Adams. That might be his best UFC win. Juan Adams, who doesn't fight MMA anymore, he's a teacher now. He lost to Carlos Felipe. He is Jared Vandera's only win in the UFC. Jared Vandera beat him by decision. He beat Harry Hunsucker, the worst to ever do it, quite literally. He did catch Parker Porter, which counter left. And then he beat Austin Lane. I mean, that is just like, that is the bottom. The absolute bottom. And now he's fighting Carl Williams. And like, yeah, if Carl Williams gets stuck swinging heavy in the pocket with him, I think he can obviously like lamp Carl Williams here. But I'll say this, Carl Williams striking, it's a bit messy, but he's taller, he's longer, he's much, much faster. He's a much better athlete than Tafa, in my opinion. And I did notice he does a pretty good job of staying out of range. Like just not kind of, like if you go watch the Sherman fight, Sherman had a lot of success kicking him, but he really would not get into the pocket and let Sherman, swing with him. And I kind of imagine that's probably what he's going to do here. And obviously Tafa could catch him, but when you look at Tafa, his game is just so predictable. It's just an overhand left. And with that kind of predictability, I don't think Williams is going to have a lot of issues, avoiding it really. Like he knows what's coming at him. There's no danger of like kicks from Justin Tafa or like him come jabbing and just like boxing him up. So I don't think Williams is going to have a hard time avoiding it. I think he's going to get takedowns here. My suspicion is pretty easily. And I think if he gets on top of Tafa, he's going to maul him. I think the KO for Tafa is live, but it's hard for me to put that past 25%. I think Williams is going to maul him and finish him on the mat here. What do you think, Legs?
Yeah, I think the under 2.5 is actually a very interesting price. I think it was like minus 140 last time I looked.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, that honestly, it seems like a no-brainer because on the feet, like I know you talked about Carl Williams striking being, a little evasive and staying out of that pocket. I don't disagree there, but it was bad optics in that last fight with Sherman. I feel like Tafa absolutely could crack him on the feet if he is staying on the feet for extended.
Is he going to defend takedowns like Sherman though?
No, I don't. It's a question. Probably not.
I doubt it. I very much doubt it.
No, I mean I think.
Do you think a fat guy like that is going to be sprawling? Like, come on, like. With all due respect to all the fat guys and the chunky guys like me, but.
But yeah, I think Carl can and absolutely will get takedowns here. So I don't disagree from that point. I just think there's a lot of scary nature for him on the feet. I'll just put it that way. I don't like Carl striking.
I'm scared while he's on the feet. I just feel like it's kind of like, I put more and I should have put even more. Like last week I was sitting there on Saturday afternoon and I was like, man, the more I thought about the Tybura fight, I was like, is it really... This is probably like the first takedown Tybura hits and the fight's over because even if he doesn't finish him, Ty's going to be too gassed to do anything past that. And I was like, can that really be higher than 30%? And that's like kind of how I think about this. It's like Tafa's not going to be able to dictate range, and just point strike him to a decision in all likelihood. Can I really put Tafa KO past like 25 to 30%? I really feel like not,
All right. Yeah, fair.
By the way, how is Tafa Chase Sherman never happened?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he was cut for a while, I guess, but
it hasn't happened. I'm just like I feel like it.
No, I know. I was just trying to look back and see like how long he was out for because I'm like, why hasn't that happened?
It just feels like a fight that has to happen, Moving on, though. Actually, before we get into the main event. In honor of Amanda Ribas, we're going to do a little game here. We're going to go over the best asses in WMMA here. I'm going to give you a couple choices, and you're going to have to rank them.
Little FMK segment here?
No, I don't want to do FMK. I'm going to give you 5 choices, and you got to rank them. Yeah. We're not stealing segments here. All right. Obviously, we're going to do both. Amanda Ribas and Rose Namajunas are going to get included on this.
Okay.
We're going to go Mackenzie Dern.
Okay.
We're going to go Polyana Viana. And then Michelle Watterson. Rank them.
Wow. I thought you were going to give me Tabitha Ricci in there. Damn you.
You want me to put... we could put... Would you rather...
I think better than Viana.
You think pure ass is, though? Like, that's like... She's got a nice ass.
Ricci
but, like, she's very muscular.
Oh, I'll take Ricci over Viana all day.
Okay. All right. Give me your 5 then. Give me your 5.
5 asses out of those. Dern's got to be 1. Got to be 1. Add OSP. We should add OSP. After last week's win, we should add OSP. Oh man. I gotta say Dern. Gotta say Ribas as 2, and then I got, what do I have left there? Michelle Watterson.
You can give me whatever. Give me your 5. Give me your 5. The 5 best asses in WMMA.
5 best asses in WMMA. That's what I'm doing here. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know about in order here, but how about we got Dern, Ribas, Ricci. Norma Dumont.
Oh, John dropping. Yeah, John just popping in here with Norma Dumont. I
didn't even see his comment. I was just thinking, I'm like, all right, Norma Dumont. And I can't give you a 5th. You got a 5th for me on top of your head?
You can't give me a 5th. How about Rose Namajunas?
No. Oh, God. No. Sid from Toy Story.
All right. So I'm going to go with
OSP's OSP's no.
OSP. I am going to go with it's kind of an odd one here because I think Ribas is way hotter than Mackenzie Dern in general. Like just pure looks wise, like the skin tone is like it really kind of like sets her apart on another level. But at the same time, like every time I hear Ribas talk or Mackenzie Dern talk, it's like it's like who would I rather be like listening to in a bedroom, and it's clearly not Amanda Ribas, you know. So I'm gonna go with Dern first. We'll go with Dern number 1. We'll go Ribas number 2. Dude, I can't do it with Ricci, man. I mean, she's hot, but like she looks like almost like boyish in a way. Like she's too fucking muscular, you know.
All right.
Like that's right. It's. I'm gonna go. Michelle Watterson number 3. Michelle Watterson out of season, out of camp.
Thick Michelle.
Who were the other options I gave you? I don't even remember now. Oh, Norma Dumont 4. That's an easy. That's a layup there.
Yeah.
Number 5 is a tough one. Like, there's a lot of women who I think are like attractive in WMMA, but I feel like if I saw them on the street and didn't know they were fighters, I'd find them less attractive. I guess. Oh, true. There it is. Glenbot from the fucking Raptors. Tracy Cortez. Tracy Cortez or Moroz. I would take Moroz, actually. I would take Moroz.
Asses. We're talking about asses here? That's all we're talking about. We're talking about asses. Moroz?
Cortez has a nice Cortez, but it's also like a fake ass, you know? It's like
yeah.
not. I'm gonna go with Moroz. I like that. So those are the definitive rankings.
I'm trying to look at some other ones here that might be Casey O'Neill. Shout out? No.
Casey O'Neill's is not bad.
Alexa Grasso.
Angela Magana used to post her ass all over the internet back in the day. I don't know how nice it is, but it's like everybody's seeing it. So anyway. We are gonna go in here. Amanda Ribas, Rose Namajunas. Rose Namajunas minus 205. The comeback on Ribas plus 175. I know a lot of sharp people that like the Ribas side here. Are you one of them, Lags?
I am not, but I'm more so interested in like a total or a prop angle here. And now the not Rose ITD is like minus 165. I was kind of hoping for a better price there, but I think just fading a Rose finish here to me seems like the best way to go about it because I feel like that's where most of the finishing equity is coming from, unless you think Ribas could sub-relate, which in theory she could. I just don't rate Ribas's takedowns that highly. So to me, it's the better, more powerful striking of Rose, the volume of Ribas on the feet. So honestly, just give me overs and not Rose ITD is how I'd be looking at this fight.
Yeah, so like I understand the why as to why people like the Ribas side at dog. I I just kind of strongly disagree with it. To your point, I don't think Ribas's wrestling is all that great. It's more judo and throws than anything else. And like she could throw Rose, but of the two, I kind of feel like Rose is a lot more likely to work up off of getting taken down here. Because like I feel the thing that's getting missed with that, with the wrestling upside of Ribas is also kind of the wrestling downside. No one really talks about it, but Ribas on bottom is not good, man. Like this is a woman who's been held down by a lot of different people when she's been put on her back. And I feel like, people don't talk about it, but it's like Rose beat Wei Li via grappling. Like I actually kind of think Rose could get on top of Ribas and hold her down, where like of the two, if you tell me one of them gets 11, 12 minutes of control here, I know it's kind of a hot take, but I sort of think it's the Rose side.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any way it could be Ribas. I mean, I think it's a bit of an outlandish take saying 11 to 12 minutes, but I don't disagree.
I agree, but I'm saying if someone did.
Right. Big if.
Like Wei Li took her down 5 times and got less than 4 minutes of control against her. I mean, even Carla barely was able to control her the last time they fought. Like Andrade took her down 3 times across the 2 times they fought, couldn't really control her. You're telling me Ribas is going to top timer? I don't really buy that. Whereas I can imagine Rose getting on top of Ribas and holding her down. In the striking, like it can be competitive, but let's be honest here. I mean, Rose Namajunas has won 5-round decisions with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, with Weili Zhang. She won a 3-round decision with Jessica Andrade. Her last fight was a competitive decision with Manon Fiorot. Like, what is Ribas shown? She came back and beat Luana Pinheiro after getting her face beaten in for a round there. Like, cool. She dominated Viviane Araujo on the mat, who has similar issues and can't get off her back. I mean, she lost the decision to Katlyn Chookagian.
I was just going to say, yeah, that's probably the best comp if you want to make one here.
Better kicker for Chookagian than Rose is. It's just like I'm looking at it, and I feel like the enthusiasm behind Ribas is just a bit misguided here. Like, can she do it? Yeah, she throws enough volume, and she's a skilled enough offensive striker to win this fight. But it's like, I don't think she's good. I mean, Joanna barely pulled away from her. Zhang didn't pull away from her over 5. You think Ribas is gonna? I'm extremely skeptical of that happening. And then you factor in like where is the KO upside here? Where's the finishing equity? I think it is like disproportionately largely skewed to the Rose side. The one thing with Rose, and I'm not betting Rose. Let me be clear here. I'm just like making the case because I keep hearing Ribas takes about why I think the line is fine. To be honest with you, I look at it and I feel like Rose is just like, yes, the best case for Ribas, in my opinion, is Rose is kind of checked out and might retire. She has talked about it a bunch, and I think that could happen. But if she's going to fight anybody at 125, a smaller woman like Ribas, who's 5'3" with less reach, is it for her. Rose moves well. She uses her reach well. I just feel like she's got the better pedigree. She's beaten better women in decisions than Ribas has. I think she can keep up on volume. I think she can get top time herself. And I think she's got a lot more KO upside. So, I mean, to me, I feel like Rose minus 200 is fine. That's my personal opinion. So.
Yep. Don't disagree.
But yeah, I mean, did you break it down already? You did, right?
Yeah. Come on, John.
Yeah. So, right. I mean, that'll do it for this show. I mean, we got Bellator Friday also. I'm actually going to try to stream tomorrow morning or early afternoon for it because it's Friday morning. But I'll do a quick breakdown show on Bellator, probably like 20, 30 minutes tomorrow whenever I have a break in work. And if I don't have a break in work, I'll find a time way to do it anyway. And I'll just check my work as I am on the show. So,
and real quick, tomorrow starts the greatest day of college or greatest day in sports. Let's just put it that way. Greatest day in sports.
The NCAA wrestling tournament?
No, March Madness. March Madness starts tomorrow. We got a full day games. We got 32 games today and tomorrow. It's going to be electric.
Yeah, I'm excited, guys. But yeah, guys, thanks for coming out. Again, please, we have 30 people in the chat right now. Please all like the show. Drop a like, subscribe. We'd appreciate it. Again, we're going to try to do more fun stuff this year. I'm thinking of launching a DraftKings show going forward. Pepe said it, and I'll talk about it tomorrow. Grant Neal for the fucking culture, though. I've got 3 units on him in Bellator on Friday. But yeah, guys, take it easy. Good luck on your bets this weekend. Hopefully we all cash. See you next week. Peace.